Okay, while I was on break, one of the people asked me if they could speak, and I would like to reopen it for Rock. You want to come on up? And
yeah, just take a minute.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry I was out paying my respects to Alan Plackwich at the County Commission, who's retiring after 3 or 4 years, and very, very fine person. A couple of observations from yesterday and today. First of all, there's some themes here. The theme of keeping the city the same, and certainly that's a very, very difficult question and philosophy to preserve, and I think that you're going about it in the right way. It also appears to me that you're looking at changes that are rather evolutionary, that probably shine away from dramatic restructuring steps. I'm hoping that works. I think that there's a possibility it will, but it brings me to another one of the themes, and that when I heard yesterday that the whole premise of the budget discussions is related to not raising the millage rate. And I want to come back to that in just a minute. And then this discussion that occurred yesterday about efficiencies, and if efficiencies are achieved, that then any savings would be passed on to the taxpayers in the city of Vero Beach. And I want to come back to that in just a minute. And before I do, in any restructuring that I've ever been through with both union employees and non-union employees in New York City and in San Francisco, we always looked at the wage classifications and the salary scales for each job. And I think, if I'm correct, the city has about 400 employees, something over 400 employees. I don't know the division between exempt, non-exempt, union, non-union, but have we and do you in your deliberations review each of the salary structures and grades for every one of those positions?
The answer is yes, and we do that merely through our union negotiations, but we also have personnel policies that dictate the positions and what their salary structures are.
Well, would it be difficult, therefore, if I made a public record request to simply look at the salary ranges for each of those categories of jobs and perhaps came back with any conclusions that I might arrive at?
Yes, Rock, the easiest way, I think, is if you go to Lynn George's office in Human Resources. She can sit down and then you can pick out what positions that you want to look at.
Okay. All right. With respect to this starting premise of no increases in the millage rate, I understand that, and I understand, I think, either the rationale or the politics behind those decisions. But I'm wondering if it's realistic in this day and age, particularly given the long-term underlying liabilities that you face, and I think need to get prepared for. That's a discussion and decisions that can't be delayed and put off for too long, or it will and has the potential to sink this city or any other city. So as a starting point, it seems to me at least you ought to open the possibility of some kind of increase in the millage rate for the residents of the city. The other impression I got is that when it comes to raising revenue, there seems to be sort of a cavalier attitude about passing those increases on to the ratepayers, both the electric utility and water and sewer utility. And I think that that's a very substantial tax on the citizens of Vero Beach in and by itself. Not only the residents of the county, and where we do, I think, a disproportionate share for some of the services that are provided by the city. It's a delicate question and a delicate issue, but I'm hoping that at least you'll keep an open mind to the question of perhaps having to modestly raise the rates for the citizens of Vero Beach. And I, as I've said before, I think ultimately, if the sale proceeds and when it is concluded, that the savings to the taxpayer will be, and businesses, will be offset by an increase in the millage that you might consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rock. Planning and Development. We're on page 32. Actually went backwards in the blue book.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tim.
Basically, mine's pretty simple. We were given directions from the city manager to try to reduce our budgets by at least 10.9%. I have a small staff. I've got 3 employees making over $70,000. I have several others that are under that. There was no way I could make that 10% without a cut on one of the senior staff levels. So what I'm doing is combining. I have 2 positions that are called managers. I'm combining it into one position. And basically we'll do some more cross-training. I will have to take on more responsibility on day-to-day on some things, but that's not a problem. I mean, other than some of the more, shall we start, the value-added stuff, we do a lot of changes in the code and all that. It may take longer to do that. I've warned the Planning and Zoning Board. Obviously, our essential services, everything from any development applications that we have to, business taxes or code enforcement, they're going to take a priority and have to be done. And we will just manage the staff to do that. With that said, we will continue to work on trying to improve the efficiency of our services. I think there's some things to be done in that area, particularly as we have now reduced our staff. When I first came here, we were 10.5 people. Now we'll be down to 6, so it's been a fairly large reduction in that, and our work is picking up. I can tell you from last year we are picking up in applications, and it all looks like the economy is certainly improving. Can we handle it? I believe we can. It may delay some certain things, but I mean, those are budget decisions we can make in the future if things get really terrible. I will come back to the manager and say it can't be done, and I'm not going to spend 80-hour work weeks. So I think right now, basically, we're looking at a few other things, I think, that's brought up by Cindy, that to do electronic credit cards that would help the customers out. I also heard this yesterday when you all talked about maybe moving Public Works up, that we could look at that. I think that's something that Monty and I could look at and how to handle.
I think we were talking about the engineering,
the engineering
department, not
part.
Public Works.
Well, I don't mean the whole Public Works. You're correct. Couldn't fit all the Public Works people in there. So Monty and I could talk about that, and I think that has we have room up there, and I think for customers, we deal a lot with Public Works. We have a very close relationship with them, and I think there's a lot to be said for both the staffs as well as for the customers who come in day to day. Not that we don't. I just want people to understand when we say one-stop shop, we do have meetings that we do joint meetings with them when we have customers come in, because there are a lot of issues that they deal with, and we have them in there so the customer doesn't have to go down to talk to them over some separate issues on a site plan or an easement or something such as that. I think that's all I really have to say, unless you have some specific questions. All I can say is, we're taking a hit here. And
Yeah, everyone is, Tim.
Yes.
Any questions of Tim?
I just have a quick question and or observation. Are we going to expect that developers or people that want to do any type of development in the city of Vero Beach, that they're going to have a longer wait time to get permits, to get their plans through and approved?
We will try not to do that. That is going to be the highest priority. As I said, part of it is working on our efficiency to make sure we get things through, and that has a lot to do with our electronic. We have our computer system, and it's keeping up and making sure things move through. And we need to work better on that, but we have time frames in our code that need to be met and should be met. So I don't foresee that unless we suddenly get an overwhelming bunch of applications come in. We do have some coming in that are more complicated than we had in the past, but I don't see that yet. but we will give them the highest priority, if that answers your question.
When you state that the number of employees from, I believe, 2006, 2007 was at 10 and now is at 6,
right.
What is our percentage drop in terms of applications, however, since 2006-7?
I don't have that, but our
Would you guess it's half or a third as what it was then?
It has dropped, but the part of it is we've changed the whole development system, so it's hard to compare apples and oranges. We do a lot of things now that we didn't do back then. I do have years going back. For instance, we've increased significantly over last year, but the prior year to that was even higher than this year. So it's kind of gone up and down, but we look at a continuing upwards. When I got here back then, I'm trying to think, I would say it was higher, but it was a different review system than we do now. So it's a little hard. It's almost like apples and oranges.
Another question. In terms of one of your time-consuming, which you had mentioned to us in the past, programs that you instituted this year, and that was the beach overlay district. And you had mentioned that did take quite a bit of time and community meetings and going back and forth in that. Excuse me. You list in your goals and challenges the continuation of the updates to the code and the comprehensive plan to bring that in line. How much of your time do you expect the necessary improvements to the comp plan will take over the next year, as opposed to how this will hurt you with the deletion of one employee?
Okay, I think basically it will slow down. It will slow down our progress in doing some of those amendments. But under the Florida statutes right now, the Growth Management Act was gutted, so it's really has a lot to do with what you all want as a city council, and the city wants to move forward on that. So what we've talked to the Planning and Zoning Board about, and I gave them a schedule over the next 2 years, in fact, of high priority, medium priority, of when we could get things done. So what we'll do, they will be drawn out more. Exactly, it will be done. For instance, Sherry Fitzgerald, Sherry is she would probably take over more of the development review job. She isn't going to be doing the comp plan stuff. And so that will slow that down. I'll be doing a lot of that, which I do now anyway. But
well, the reason I'm asking this question is because you had mentioned from the days at some of the planning and zoning meetings that the code as we have it now needs a lot of work. It had not been worked on in many, many years, and I thought that was one of your very high priorities, and yet I haven't seen anything coming from planning and zoning about the code except for the beach overlay in the last couple of years.
No, we've been working pretty diligently on changes in the code, everything from the parking regulations. The overlay was just one thing. We did the development review. We changed that process, the subdivision ordinance. You're now going to have the tree ordinance provisions are coming back. We're looking at the mitigation. In fact, we're not to hearing. We still got a workshop with the Planning and Zoning Board. We're coming through with a planned development ordinance, which is to help facilitate these developments such as the Hampton Inn. And we're also looking at changes. The boarding house issue came up. We've done some changes in the definition. So we are continuing to do it.
Okay.
To me, it's a high priority, but it is a value added. Can we exist? I mean, for instance, I keep bringing it up to people. If you look at our code, automobile service stations, gas stations are not allowed in the C1 district. Now, any fool can look out there and know they're out there. They're there. And we're not out there. They're just those kind of things that need to be done in the code. And eventually we need to get back into the code and get rid of a lot of the zoning districts, simplify it. It'll be much easier for everybody. It'll make a lot more sense. It's just
But that has just been
I'm
put
moving
up.
along with that. We
okay.
need to do some wetlands regulations, particularly to do some buffers. We were going to do that in the storm drainage. I want to do that this year. That's in the comp plan. I think that we talk about the lagoon. I think it's an important area to work, so I'm going to work with the Public Works on that. So I am still working on that, and to me that is a high priority. But right now, if essentially we need to provide the development applications, all that, I have to make sure that's done. We will
Right.
continue to work on the other. That, to me, in some ways is more important than the comp plan. Even though I believe in the comp plan, the city hasn't really done a lot of emphasis on a comp plan. I'd like to have that. As I said, before I leave the place, I want the comp plan, the zoning to be up to date and something that would help the city for the future.
And I agree with you. I mean, that's
So,
discussions I've had with
right.
members in the community, and that is that, we, as the residents of the city, have came forward and participated in planning sessions and participated in development of the downtown business plan and the beachside business plan, and all of these great ideas have came forward, and yet nothing occurred, or not as much as we thought would occur with the planning and zoning. So there is that concern and that level of concern out there. I've had people from the community ask me, why did it take so long to get Bonefish opened? Was it a problem with...
Well,
I'm sure there were a lot of different things.
It
but
has a lot to do, yes.
The question was it the city that was holding back commercial development?
No, not necessarily. Not at all. I mean, usually...
I would like to mention here that I met with the owner of the Bonefish Grill, and he complimented on you on your help.
We tried.
He couldn't have been nicer. He said it was just a pleasure.
Right. And we've worked closely with them, and we try not to be the impediment. That's the one thing I place on the staff. We owe these people. They're putting their money down. We owe them to go through and make decisions and move them through the process and help them where we can through the process. Not all the time it's that easy where somebody buys a piece of land that's got a non-conforming use, didn't know it, and we're trying to figure out how to get them into compliance, and, it takes some time. Some of that we may have to not do as much just because it depends on the staffing. We will still try to work with individuals, particularly in these kind of projects. I mean, for our employment and tax base, clearly have a big public interest. That's why.
Of course. And that's one thing that I represent is the business community.
We really want to do that. I think a lot what we're looking at, for instance, when you see the planned development ordinance we're working on, it's to provide incentives to allow these kind of developments to occur in the city and the infill and redevelopment. And it certainly will have a big impact, in the long run. So
And the expectation of the Business Improvement District coming on board later this summer and in the fall, the plans are going forward with that, and that will hopefully assist us in bringing businesses and some redevelopment into the downtown core area.
Yeah, as your planner, I think I wholeheartedly support these efforts. There may be some issues over the politics, over where the money's going, but getting the property owners and the business interests together, or the neighborhoods, and working together to do it. I mean, they need to. They can't just expect the city to do everything for them. That's the only way to build. So I think this is a great. Well, they do. Yeah, I know. But this is a really good step forward, and that makes a much more vibrant city for us.
And it also makes their buy-in much more critical if they do it. Now, Tim and I both have attended meetings and discussed this with at least the two business associations that are really delving into this. But we've emphasized over and over, guys, you all need to come together and put this together, bring it to us, and let's take it to council and get this moved forward.
Well, Tim, on page 32, I noticed you've got a 37% increase in advertising. What are you going to do now that you haven't been doing?
Well, that's all that advertising is both our advertising we do for ordinances and comp plans, and that we pay for. So, for instance, this land swap we're talking about to do we're paying for all that. So that's going to be expensive. That runs in thousands of dollars. Plus, we do get the applications. The applicants do have to pay for their advertising. So those costs, we have revenues coming in that you don't see on here in our revenue on the applications that take care of that. But we're looking at more an increase in that this year based on what's happening.
So it's a prediction of increase.
It's a prediction, yes.
Yeah, well, the expenditures so far year to date, Mr. Mayor, 4864. If anything, is 5,500 is low. We want to improve.
And I did have pardon me. I did have a question. If we go back to the revenues for the department, what did we have in terms of the planning department revenue? You're expecting only a small increase this year from 56 to 70?
We believe 70.
I'm sorry. You're not expecting an increase this year. You're staying at 70 was your projected.
And we think it'll be the same this year. And right now, I mean, we could look at it a little more, but again, we like to be conservative about this. That's the thing I'm concerned with. And for instance, like business taxes, we don't know till September how much the business tax is going to be, because you'll see a small number, but we get most of those revenues in the September.
And what is our current to date on 2012 for the planning department revenue, Cindy? Sorry. I should have said your name first and
Let's
then
see.
ask the question.
I've got some numbers. Maybe aren't as good as Cindy's numbers.
What line is it? Because I probably
That
Planning
is-
Department revenue so far year to date is 52,819.
Yeah, I show. This was done. I had my assistant run out the numbers for this period, last year's fiscal budget, and this year. So I think this is through the end of June. We're showing 60,000. Now, whether that's true, it's over 60,000. Yeah.
Through month end May, they were already 75% collected on that 70,000 for the year at only 66%.
Okay, so
of the
we're
year,
expecting that perhaps those may increase.
And actually, I think if you recall 2 budgets back, Tim and I, those numbers had been put in a not conservative fashion. They were a little higher, and Tim and I had corrected them a couple years back, and we think they're running pretty steadily. And then the business tax, as you mentioned, that's actually in my quarterly variance analysis. That almost all comes in August and September. It's not a pro rata.
Right now, we're running ahead of what we did last year on the business tax. So as I said, the economy is certainly picking up. You can tell people making more calls. People want to do more rezonings and all that. That's a good indication of the economy.
You also see the other one that varies considerably is, for instance, code enforcement fines. If you look, we've been running 8,000 a year. Our actuals for 11-12 are more like 23,000. Again, that's not something we go out and actively seek or can predict, and so we just keep a conservative number. And generally, a
lot of those are like those code enforcement liens. So, for instance, the last one you just approved, it was a lien reduction, but it was still $8,000. So that. And we got several of those where we've got numerous properties that have that on there. So,
what is the outstanding balance if you had to add up all the code liens that are out there right now that haven't yet came to this council?
I would have to check the records. I
just
wouldn't know off
wondered.
the hand. I mean, it'd be interesting to know that and how many properties. I don't know that.
Any other questions of Tim?
Yes, I have a couple more. I'm just looking at this organization chart and the prior one, and you have one planning manager. Before you had a comprehensive planning program manager and a current planning manager. So apparently those jobs are going into one. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what did they do, or what do they do?
Well, the development review manager was responsible for the development review process. So all the applications that came in, that's what that person's responsible for. The other manager had doing comprehensive plan stuff. She's also does the work on rezonings, comp plan amendments that come in, as well as our community rating system. That takes a lot of work to have that done every year.
Who's going to do both of those things now?
I combined the job. Right now, it looks like it'll be Sherry doing the job. I will have to do some more assistance there, but we'll have to work that out. We just haven't had that, and I just have to do.
So are you still going to continue to have Hank, or what am I looking at here?
Well, yes. Well, right now, I'm combining the two positions. I have Hank and Sherry's position. I'm combining it. Right now, it's going to be Sherry in that position.
And so Hank will be working for Sherry? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, Hank will not be working.
Okay. And you feel like you can get the job done?
Yes. I mean, it's going to take some work, but, we're going to do with what we have and the resources. And if I got a real problem, I'll be coming back to say something about it. But
I have one other comment, Mr. Mayor. This is just a general comment. I get numerous comments about code enforcement that we're not proactive enough in enforcing the code. I get dozens of them. It could be room rentals. It could be... It runs the entire gamut, and a lot of what I hear is, we have trouble doing that, or someone's got to report it, or I hear from our legal and Tim that, we might get a lawsuit if we do that, and I don't think we do a good enough job of enforcing our code. That's my statement. I do not think we're currently doing a good enough job of enforcing code across the gamut. Just a statement. That's all.
But in that statement, then, what do you suggest? I said, if you don't think we're doing a good job, what are your recommendations?
Well,
Mr. Mayor?
my recommendation would be this. I hear all too often, we can't do it because it may risk a legal problem, or we can't. And you have to take some amount of risk to enforce the code. It's just a personal opinion. If you never are going to take a risk in enforcing the code, you won't enforce the codes. Also, I think some of the fines, $50 one time, those have to be changed to something a bit more reasonable, so they're more difficult for people to bear. So I think there's a lot we can do about it. We just being more proactive and changing the fining structure so it hurts more. Answer your question.
All right. Well, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you because I think our people are doing the best they can. Yes, we can't. We follow the due process. And when we say we can't do it, you don't understand. A lot of people out there think you can automatically do things like that. We're not going to do that. And we're not afraid to go to court. I mean, that's not it, but we don't want to put us in a legal position that is so vulnerable, or we've harassed the rights of these people to the point where, it's not fair. But we are bolstering our code. I think your comment about the fine is we can do that. I've talked to Mr. Kamen about it. The people don't, one thing about our fine system, it's a $50 to start with, then $100. It can escalate. We also have... But we can look at making some changes in that, and that just we'd have to pass an ordinance. But we're willing to look at that. It isn't my people we don't want to do it, but my staff is working hard out there. They're running out 15 to 20 active activities or cases they're opening every day among them, and there's only so much you can do. Everything from a banner out there on the top of the patio to people that want to park boats and sell them at their house in the front yard, which is not legal under the code. So they're doing what they can, but a lot of things we have to do by complaint. The harder ones, and the rental situation's a hard one, and you got to be fair to the people. So we do the best we can, and we have to have the evidence to be able to go forward to prosecute, and that's what's the hardest part.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. I think it's a useful dialogue, and
yeah, I mean, that's all.
Yeah.
99% of the cases come from public complaints.
We do some. Sometimes we do comprehensive where we know there's problems occurring. We'll be out there. For instance, there's a lot of signs, or we'll work with the community who wants us to do a comprehensive sweep, a neighborhood association. But we do pick up some. But most of them, you're right, are complaint driven. I mean, we couldn't. I can go down any street and see violations. It's very difficult.
Most of them come from calls from citizens that are
and we will
upset.
follow up on all the calls.
Please bring a few in, but I started my political career on the code enforcement, and that board has more power than you actually believe. They can actually take your property if you don't pay the codes, and the fines go up to the value of the property. We actually foreclosed on one piece of property when I was on there. That group does a damn good job. Any other questions for Tim? Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, everybody.
Let's see, general fund construction, page 57.
What we have here on page 57, 58, 59 in the budget is the one-year snapshot of what's in the 5-year capital plan. So what I'd like to suggest is rather than look at these pages and look at this 1 year in a vacuum, let's pull out our 5-year capital program, and then we can see how it is in the context of last year, this year, and the years after. And actually, it's the very first part of this. If you look on starts on page 3 of this 5-year capital plan, if everyone has it. This particular fund, 311, all that this fund does is take in 1 cent sales tax and distribute it to the various other funds where the actual construction projects are, as well as pay debt service. We do not have right now a updated, at least as the time we prepared this budget, an updated estimate on 1 cent sales tax for the year. So I just used a slight escalation. All the state revenue sharing numbers have been going up, so it should be good news. It shouldn't be worse than this, of about $1.7 million. We make some interest on those investments. And then if you look down at the bottom, the expenditures for that money are debt service transfers for the various loans that we have outstanding, and then a large transfer to 304, which is where the projects lie, as well as a small transfer to the recreation construction, which is where the recreation projects lie. So that's pretty straightforward stuff. And if we go to the next page, we'll see how we spend the money.
Thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Larson, before you move on. Under revenues, transfer from the Whitaker Trust. You're showing in $1,500,000.
We are, and after I put this together, I realized it's a bit convoluted. We're actually transferring money from the Whitaker Trust and then transferring it back out to Rec Construction. So when we update this, I may show it go directly from the Whitaker Trust to Recreation Construction. It's to support a rural pump replacement in the out years, and that's what that money is for. So rather than bring it in here and then send it back out again, I may do a direct transfer.
Okay.
Once we did
Thank
this,
you.
I thought that looks kind of silly.
And
Good
just,
question.
If you don't mind letting the public know about the Whitaker Trust, just briefly, and how that those funds are designated specifically for recreation.
Specifically for recreation, park improvements, and park maintenance.
Yes, I'm sorry,
so
I said recreation. I was wrong. It's parks.
It's parks, is my
Okay.
understanding.
Right.
Absolutely.
What is the balance? 'Cause it-
Finance director boot camp. Give me 1 second. I've got the CAFR. I think the Whitaker Trust still has a fairly substantial balance, if I'm not mistaken. Right now, as of the end of fiscal year 12, the fund balance was still $780,000 in the Whitaker Trust.
that we oftentimes get questions about what are in some of these trust funds. So.
Just so we keep it appropriate funds. I know they were very interested in the parks, and that's why they.
And that's why it was there. Those funds, if you look in our audited financial statements, are all segregated, separately accounted for, so that it's
Yeah, we
very
don't have
clear that the
standalone
interest
issues,
earnings,
yeah.
as well as the principal, the corpus of the principal, stay in separate funds, and you can clearly track the use of those funds. So.
But the interest from the Whitaker Trust goes right back into the balance.
Whitaker Trust Fund. It actually has an entirely separate fund in our general ledger and gets reported separately in the CAFR.
And what is the earning on that funds each year?
7%.
Well, I know I can't do that math. You got to calculate. Figure that
Unfortunately, we can't put our ready cash into long-term investments like that. We have a different investment policy for those funds, so it's even
7%.
worse. Unfortunately, last year was a whopping, let me see, $3,500,
Wow.
$3,600.
out. Good interest.
Less than 1%.
Yeah.
That's going to get better. Interest rates are going up.
Do you guarantee that?
Yeah, put that in writing, will you?
They're either going up or they're going down. So.
They're going up. I wish they weren't.
The 5-year plan that we see for the actual expenditures for the money that start on page 4 includes something that we started last year, so I'll just point it out again. The expenditures used to be sort of and the revenues in a vacuum with no accounting for the balances that come forward or end the year. And so we've incorporated that starting last year into these projects for 2 reasons. One, so that you can be clear about how your money is flowing year to year, and also so that we can kind of, so we can level out the transfers rather than having every year be balanced by, I apologize, I've got a serious frog in my throat. Every year be balanced by a backfill of proposed borrowing, which is kind of what was happening before. The revenue sat there alone, the expenditures sat there, and the balancing number was always sort of a just poke in a proposed borrowing, see how the year goes. And if we didn't really have the intention of borrowing the money, that just didn't. It was more confusing than anything else. So now what you can see is the audited balance forward into 12-13, and these are from the financial statements, is $568,000. And with the revenue we're now projecting for 12-13 and the revised expenditures, which will be coming to you in an upcoming budget amendment, we should end the year we're in right now with about $1.5 million and bring that forward into 13-14. And that $1.47 million, along with these revenues, is what will support our programs for 13-14 that we're proposing. And then, even though we'll eat the fund balance up a little bit, we don't have any years in the coming years where we go negative or eat the fund balance down to a point where it's a really, really small number. Even out at the 5-year mark in 17-18, we're showing $162,000 worth of a residual balance. Not huge, and certainly we are trending downward, but we believe that at least that far out, that's a pretty comfortable number.
Well, and Cindy, these numbers are going to change as a result of the police transactions on here, too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You got that $247,000 that will go away, and that'll improve those balances across all the years. Good point. We'll be back up in the $400,000 range. The other thing that is kind of inherent in here is, and we talked about this a little bit before, what I've tried to do is begin to push more of the capital purchases that used to always come out of the general fund into this fund, where they are an appropriate use of 1 cent sales tax. The law requires that capital that we purchase with 1 cent sales tax include things like having a 5-year useful life, et cetera. So you can't just go buy every little tiny thing out of here. But where those expenditures met the criteria, rather than leave them in the operating fund and make them be supported by ad valorem revenues and other revenue sources, I've moved them to more restrictive funds, and that's why you'll see things like the police department's live scan hardware upgrade for $11,000 is here, whereas in past years it probably would have been in the general fund, and the same with the shared storage array and some other projects here. So with that, there are individual project sheets for each one of these, and the department heads are here to answer questions about the specific projects.
On the second page in there, it has contribution from airport fund of $30,000. Monty, do you know what that's for?
Airport.
The second
That's for
page
the
are 3 and 4.
Bridge Airport
the
Road.
bridge? Okay.
Yeah, that's that grant.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have to really say the airport worked with us, and this was a huge benefit to us. Eric worked with the grant agencies and was able to secure funding that we would have had to have borrowed or got from other sources to replace that bridge at the 34th Avenue over the main canal.
What is the $30,000 for? I mean, is that for planning? $30,000 wouldn't build a foot of that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of a little bit of a backfill to support what needs to be done, less the grants that you see up there,
Yeah.
The 575 and the 2465.
Okay.
And as a result of this, what happened is the proposed borrowing that we had originally had for, I think, 14-15 was
Almost $2.5 million.
almost $2.5 million. It's down
I was
to
just
$840,000.
curious why you broke it apart. I thought it would be in part of that grant, but that's okay.
This is one where, rather than run this project through the airport fund construction, we went ahead and since the large part of it's here, this is one where we were smart enough not to show some confusing movement of money, and we just put the grants directly here. And even though the people at the airport will manage them, they'll be accounted for here.
Cindy,
So-
we could probably go through each capital one quickly then.
Absolutely, at your discretion.
We can go through each one or just ask
Six,
questions?
page 6, I just page through.
Right. Before
don't
we
have any
start on
questions,
page 6, I am looking back on page 4, and it states that whereas the fiscal year 12-13 original budget for police vehicles was $22,000, now we're looking at an increase of $182,000 this year. Did we have a lot of vehicles go down?
No, I'm sorry. If you compare that to the last year's 5-year capital, what the chief had requested was that I take the 13-14 expenditures and push them back into 12-13 so that he can actually order the vehicles before the end of this fiscal year. It didn't change the total. There was $180,000 in 13-14, but that way the timing will be such that he can order them and actually get them in the fall, rather than having to wait till 1 October to order them and not get them till the spring.
And the 182, are those how many brand new police vehicles do we usually on page 6?
On page 6, there's a list, and essentially what that supports is 5 to 6 vehicles a year. Up there in that corner, you see the little breakout. They go 5 one year, 6 the next year, 5, 6, like that.
And they're new, right?
I believe these are the new vehicles. Where they can with the detective vehicles and things like that, they replace them with used.
But the patrol vehicles are new, right?
And equipped with lights and bars and all of the things that go with
All
it.
the bells
And
and
then
whistles.
is there
literally.
not a corresponding amount into the budget when we sell those each year?
We do have sales of surplus property.
Okay.
That will show up. We don't generally budget for it because it varies from year to year. When we get to the fleet management contract, we may begin having an actual budget for it because it'll be on a more consistent basis.
But when those
in the
were
audited CAFR, it
disposed
shows.
of, would they not come back into the police budget as funding?
They come back into the general fund as revenue.
Okay.
What you'll see sometimes in the audited financial statements are sales of surplus in miscellaneous revenue.
With that fleet management contract, did that leasing company, did they want to stay away from all police vehicles or just the patrol vehicles?
All police
All of them?
vehicles that are involved in emergency services.
They're very adamant about that.
Just a curious question, Jim. How many miles do we put on these things in their life?
In a life,
Yeah, the life of the car.
I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 100,000. Now, we often, or sometimes we move it up. For example, detectives. There was a lieutenant out, I guess it's been about a month and a half ago, that was driving by the house, and he stopped and we were talking, and the vehicle he was in had 137,000 miles on it, but he was the supervisor of that particular patrol. But the patrolmen themselves, probably around the 80,000 mark.
And we still allow all of our police officers to drive their vehicles home wherever they live, isn't that correct?
Not wherever they live. We do have regulations as to the response time callback as to the distance.
Okay.
And the last comment is the reason that when we do sell these vehicles, we don't tend to make a lot of money off of them because they do have, in excess of 100,000 miles, and in a lot of cases, hard miles, and so they don't bring a lot of money usually.
Page 7, we eliminate.
Just so we know what on page 8, what is the live scan hardware upgrade?
This is actually something I think the chief left, but this is something he was referring to earlier. This is the print scan software where they can actually take the prints.
When you go in, instead of doing the ink,
Right.
they do a live scan.
Most everybody's getting away from ink, and most of ours are live
At
scan.
least hopefully you're alive while you're standing there.
Well, if not, they can reach your arm up.
There's a great thought. Nice.
Sad.
This again, the chief's not here. They started last year a server virtualization project, and this is the second phase of it. Actually, last year it was in the general fund, and looking at it again, looking at the requirements of the equipment and the useful life, we moved it over to 1 cent.
Good man.
The next two projects, I think Paul Mills is here, so he can speak to those, as well as the phone system replacement project. That one, I will tell you, the reason that project, the phone system replacement, keeps slipping, if you compare 5-year plans, is we're trying to put it off until the sale of the electric utility so that we don't replace something that then isn't going to belong to us. So.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hey, Paul.
Good morning. How are you? Which
The
one do you-
virtual server redundancy.
Virtual server routine. Okay. We have several servers located in our data center, and we have a virtual server there already. This is a project we actually had started several years ago, but because of expenses we had and everything going on, we weren't able to finish it. This project is to get a shared storage array here at City Hall and for a couple of hosts because our virtual server is approaching its 5-year mark. We also have several servers that will be expiring with their maintenance, and those costs of those to replace those individual servers are going to exceed $55,000. So our original project was to just get a SAN at the $40,000 is what we'd originally asked for. However, because of the maintenance expirations, we thought it would be a good time to go ahead and replace the 2 servers that would be required there as well. Because right now we're only operating with a single server at this point.
The next one's the IT computer room ups.
Yes. And the reason that particular unit was installed in 2002. The police department just installed a new UPS last year, so I'm going based off of their installation costs and the unit for what they had replaced with theirs. We're going to get the same unit. We're also going to expand the capacity of it a little bit because with the sale of the electric utility, our data center is currently located out at the T&D facility. That will need to be relocated back here to City Hall. And that's also the reason why I want to try and get this virtual server redundancy. If we get that installed here, that will allow us to more efficiently move those servers, instead of having to physically bring them down, we can move them across the wire onto the new platform here. So if we can get all that set up before this happens, it'll make life for us and all of our users a lot easier.
And then last, the phone system replacement.
Oh, yes, the phone system replacement. We currently have in contract with a company called Continuant, and they have indicated that they will provide support on our existing system for as long as there's parts. They won't commit to a de-support date on it, but they've been very responsive to our needs when we have problems. They have given us spare parts that we actually have here in our computer room in our vault, so that we have on-site spares. So as long as they're willing to support our existing system, I don't see any benefit to getting a new system, especially with looking in, with the sale of the utility and reducing buildings. It doesn't make sense to do that. I would rather wait and see, because we can collapse our existing system down and let everything settle, let the dust settle after the utility sells, as long as Continuant is willing to provide support for the phone system. And it meets our needs. So, but that number's out there because eventually it's going to have to be addressed.
Most definitely. Thank you very much.
We'll just keep pushing it forward to that point until we decide how to deal with it.
Anything else?
I think those are the only ones
Great.
in there. Thanks, Paul.
Stormwater outfalls. I've got a question on the next one. Mr. Falls, I certainly commend anything we do to help control our stormwater outfalls. I mean, the BAFA program, all this stuff. But once again, I'm still perplexed as to the effectiveness of the work that we're doing, and would like to see some statistics and it being measured, how effective it is, what's our bang for the buck that we're spending on these projects.
And Mr. O'Connor asked me that information, and I've got a package I'll be giving to him later today. But the type of outfalls that we have treated previously were the larger diameter ones. These, as you see, the decreasing numbers as we're getting close to having some kind of treatment on most of our system. But the best available technology for the outfalls that exist today is the Type 2 nutrient removal baffle box. And they are rated to take, I think, if I get these wrong, I may have them reversed, but 18% total nitrogen and 15.5% total phosphorus. And that'll be in the information I give to the city manager. The best alternative is to use a detention pond system that has plants in it that do some of that filtration. But in a already developed environment like we're in, there's not space available. So we have to find the best thing we can do where we spend our money. Before the nutrient boxes were on the market, it was just a regular sedimentation box. Those removal rates were probably a third of what I just gave you for nutrient removal on these. So the technology has improved. Hopefully it will improve again, and hopefully some of these boxes we could do a retrofit if the screening. The nutrient boxes have the baffle system, but they also have a screen that removes floatables, which is the grass and stuff that once it's in the water column and breaks down, that's when it releases that nitrogen and phosphorus to the river. So I'll be giving that information to the city manager, but it's an estimate of what they remove.
And where will these be planned to be placed 2013-14?
I'll have a list of those that I will get to the city manager. We just try to budget a certain amount to let us do this, and we do this work on the smaller ones in-house. One of the areas that we'll talk about would be Vero Isles, where they have, when that project was built in the late 50s, each street has, I think, done two or four on each side of the street, and it's a small 8-inch clay pipe that discharges directly to the river.
Yeah.
We're going to replace those pipes, and then at the inlet structure, we are working on something yet. We don't know exactly what we'll do there.
Well, based on the potential funding of 170, can you do this type of work? Because that's going to take road repair, and it's going to be a lot more than 170.
No, it's not under the roadways. These in Vero Isles, the inlets are off the edge of the road. The pipe goes directly across between two homes to the
right,
road.
but it's going through someone's yard, and
Yes.
we're going to have to tear it up, and that's going to be more expensive than if it's just at the end of the road going right into the canal.
Yeah, and we'll have some other, as Mr. Winger asked yesterday, we have an item for swale sod that will replace the sod with,
Right.
with those accounts.
My question being, though, that this seems a more substantial type project, and that's probably why it's been put off longer than the ones where the outlet was just at the end of the road or right across the street from the canal. Will that 170 get you to fixing the problem in Vero Isles within 1 year?
No, it's an item number 23. Look at page 23. It's a separate item.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so that's why I was going back to what's on page
the
13.
I don't have of these for page 13 in with the list. This would allow us to do ones that have or on our priority list, but we just didn't include it with these.
So page 13 then of stormwater outfalls of a total of 170 is separate from the reconditioned Vero Isles outfalls.
Separate, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Monty, a tangential question. I know you had talked to the school board a little bit about the
What is
property
13?
there. I know it would be a minimal impact, but I just wondered if anything further had developed.
The school board is, as I've talked to some of the folks over there, they still haven't made a decision as what they want to do to that property. I think they've had a couple offers on it for use. And he's talking about the old Osceola site on 6th Avenue. And there was some potential for a stormwater management tract on the south end of that property because
Flooding in the neighborhood.
it's low. They would have to do some digging of a pond to fill the west, the north side to be able to be used commercially. But it's still being talked about, but I don't have any concrete information
Do
for
you
you.
know what that's zoned for? Is that POI? Because that school was put in there a long time ago.
I don't know the zoning in there.
I don't know either, but it's very restrictive because of the residential abutment.
Components
there.
on three sides.
I'll get an answer from Tim.
Okay, so we're going on to page 14 now, I guess.
Move on.
New sidewalk.
Again, we've been budgeting some money each year, and you'll see this starting to decline because we've made a big dent in our sidewalk program where we're filling in spots that didn't have sidewalk and building sidewalks on some of the routes that we had identified as major uses. The one that stands out the most is the Royal Palm Boulevard, Royal Palm Place, where we connected US 1 over to the boulevard. And we've been doing those for several years now and are getting close.
And again, neighbors can contact you if they feel the need within their neighborhood for a sidewalk, if there is a lot of people that utilize a specific route, and they could work through the process with your department to utilize some of these funds for bringing something into their community.
They can.
Actually, this probably ought to go to your, on page 22, and just the annual maintenance of sidewalks. But is the sidewalk on Causeway Boulevard, I know that's a state road, is that sidewalk come under the city to maintain?
It does not.
It does not.
It does not.
Thank you.
If there's an issue or some broken panels, we do a sidewalk inspection of the city sidewalks so that we try to keep our risk down each year.
That's grinding
We
the
identify
areas,
any tripping hazards. And I can tell you after traveling around through some different cities the last couple of weeks on a little trip to North Carolina, I walked on a lot more uneven surfaces than I've found in Vero Beach in the last year. So we do a really good job of keeping those tripping hazards to a minimum. We grind the ones with a concrete grinder. That can be done that way. If not, we identify those to be replaced and rebuilt. But we'll get a hold of.
Do we do an annual inspection?
We do.
Okay.
David Gay's group does that.
Thank you.
Culvert replacement at 23rd and 20th?
This is the last one on the 20th Avenue section between State Road 60 and the school board property down at where the county administration building used to be. There were some crossings of the canal there adjacent to McCanch Park, and we've done all of those except this one. This will be a larger culvert, 108-inch diameter.
Yeah.
And we're also going to widen the road to put a turn lane in there. It's very similar to what we've done at 21st Street near St. Helens Church. And we did that project a few years ago. We did have this in this year's budget. We weren't able to get to this project, so we've just pushed it out 1 year. We're going to get out this upcoming year.
Weren't able to get to Mr. Dexter. What was the problem?
Well, we had to finish the design work on it.
Designing.
We just weren't able to get that finished, and then we still have the permitting to go through. So.
And the permitting stuff. Thank you.
16th Avenue, 16th Street.
Yeah, I'm going to let Don talk to some of these. He worked with Steve Fuller on this one, but
16th Street is replacing a culvert underneath that road, and this is, I think, between 26th and 27th Avenue. It's a backlot culvert. This one was also in this current year's budget. We weren't able to get to that, and so we'll be working on that probably this winter coming up. We'd like to try and do these projects when schools are on break under 16th Street because that minimizes the traffic there. So we'll be looking at this probably at the, if not Christmas, if we can get in and out real quickly, try and do it when the school's out for Christmas break, or we'll wait until spring break and do that work.
It states that this one is failing, and the other one did not state that. Is it in a failure mode right now?
It's getting close. The 108-inch culvert under 23rd Street, it does have some rust and some areas where it's weeping near the bottom at the flow line. This one is similar condition, but we're monitoring it on a regular basis. If we see any problems, we'll just have to jump in and take care of it. But
it's not in a failing status where we're worried about the road degradation?
No,
okay.
No, not that bad.
And the difference in these two, the previous one will be a contract job, 108 inches, something a little bigger than we can tackle. This one, Don, is this a 30-inch or less?
It's a 24 or 30-inch pipe, and we'll take care of that with our own crews.
In-house. Traffic signals, these are painting the signals in the downtown area. Again, this was on tap for this year, but we took this funding and switched to the 17th Street and A1A job. If you remember, we were successful in getting the state to fund the rebuilding of that signal, which would have been on our nickel and would have been about a $250,000 item for us. All we had to do was agree to pay for the painting of this signal. So we switched the money we had set aside for the downtown signal to do this one. We'll put the downtown in and repaint those for next year.
And will that be done in-house?
It will not. We do not have a capability for painting contractors.
Are these powder coated? I know the A1A was powder coated, but
Originally, those signals downtown were powder coated, but at this point, you'd have to completely disassemble them and haul them, ship them off to get them powder coated. So they'll be pressure cleaned and sandblasted and painted.
And just for the members of the public's information, in terms of what is taking place right now on the reconstruction of the signals at A1A and 17th, that is currently being led by the state, and it is the flags that are up on that road are not for the lane that we were worried about that they were trying to put in toward the beach park.
That's correct.
Which was unnecessary.
The signal's being replaced because 2 or 3 years ago now, we had one of the signal poles fail on the northwest corner. We got that replaced temporarily. But we were able to get the state to agree to do this, save us about $250,000. The design work is just about finished. Construction hopefully will start later this summer and get that signal done before
the season.
Peak season of traffic. We did find out last week that due to some utility conflicts on the northeast corner, they are not going to put an actual pole there. They will revise one of the other poles to put another mast arm. Helps us in two ways. We were going to have some major oak tree trimming to accommodate that pole. Now that doesn't have to occur because some of our utility providers had some things in the ground that saved us. So,
and while they do that work, we are not expecting any complete closure of that intersection at any time.
Not at all. The existing stay in and stay functioning. They'll put the new poles in, new mast arms up, new lights on, and then activate those as they take the others down.
Okay. And will there be any work done in the evening or anytime lanes will be closed?
We'll as soon as we get a contract schedule and scope of work from that, we'll coordinate through the city manager's office and the police department and the papers to let folks know what to expect.
Page 18, street and stormwater annual vehicle replacement.
This is to start replacement of some of our vehicles in the streets group. There's none slated for next year. Don, do you have the list of those vehicles?
I did not bring them, but it's the larger dump trucks, equipment like that we replace it, and with the 304 money.
And one of the things we're looking at is we have a small road grader that we grade our unpaved roads with, and it's getting close to the end of its useful life, and that's a big ticket item. And we're developing some specifications right now to go out to bid for contract grading of our roads. We're going to do it in two parts. Our bigger roads are easy to grade. The ones that are hard, and we're kind of concerned about having a contract, are the alleys because they're so tight. If we can bid that in two sections and see how those bids look, we'll bring something back to the city manager to evaluate that. But that would keep us from having to replace that very expensive piece of equipment for the amount of roads that we have to grade is not that great.
Is it cheaper to go ahead and pave those alleys and than continue grading them? Just a thought. Just a thought.
Well, we're looking at a couple things. We've started to see the use of asphalt millings on lesser traveled roadways, and we've actually used this on one alley in the downtown area behind the Bangkok restaurant.
Yeah.
That alley was
Right.
always problematic with drainage and washing the sand into the back of those businesses. So we put some asphalt millings on it, and it seems to be holding up pretty well. If that works out, that's a less expensive alternative
Good possibility,
to paving,
yeah.
and we'll stabilize those and eliminate the need for grading. So we're going to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and they help on the alleys, but still we have our oak lime trees that we're going to have to keep grading. Yeah, that's
Don't have an option.
no option.
Not unless you folks change the charter, and I don't look for that to happen.
Okay, street sweeper, page 19.
This is a program we looked at and worked with finance to avoid a huge capital investment for this piece of equipment. We have two street sweepers now. They are both getting very problematic with maintenance. We're going to go with keeping one of the existing ones as a backup and go to a leased program where we have a street sweeper that we can keep as a better functioning piece of equipment, and the age will stay better on that.
What is the current age of the street sweepers?
I think they're 8 years old.
8
One's
years
8, one's seven and 8, or 6 and 8, something
Okay,
like that.
that's close enough to,
Yeah,
to know that, hey, they're getting a good work.
And we have one vacuum sweeper and one mechanical broom sweeper. The mechanical broom works best in getting the debris out of the curb lines. So that's what we're looking at here as a lease.
And actually, that lease purchase will be on the agenda for August the 20th, I believe, is when we're planning to bring that to you. So it actually starts in 12/13.
Also, we had looked at contracting out and had a company that came around, and the only way he could really match any of our pricing was to reduce the frequency of the service. One of the problems we have is our street sweepers are part of our NPDS permitting process, and so therefore we get credit for what we pick up and weighs against the discharge into the lagoon and other areas.
Street sweeping becomes much more important in a urbanized area where you have a lot of curb and gutter. That stuff washes straight into the system. The more we can get out, the more it keeps out of the stormwater system. Ultimately, would get some of it trapped with our sediment boxes and baffle boxes, but some of that does get pushed on out into the lagoon. So we're trying to be proactive on the.
And our frequency of street sweeping? And then part of it, you're going behind your crew. Yeah, your maintenance crew, your ground maintenance crews. But
Right. Typically once a week. We try and hit all of the curb streets in town.
Page 20, annual street restoration.
This is our paving program. We didn't do any paving this year, but we plan on letting a contract next year in the amount of about $400,000. We have a system where we rate the streets in the city, a pavement management system, so we can pave the worst first. And we have, did you just get those?
We just got the raw data in, and so over the next month or two, Steve Fuller and I will be going out and taking a look at the poorest rated streets and get a priority list.
We always have citizens that call and tell us their street is the worst in town, and sometimes they do fall on the list. But we like to be consistent and have a objective criteria or subjective criteria that we can do those, so we're not being accused of.
Well, one of the ones I've gotten 2 or 3 comments is Ocean Boulevard, north from
You mean Ocean Drive?
the Ocean Drive. Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, significant degradation and a rippling effect that has occurred. And I don't know how much that is associated with the construction that has went on over the last few years as they put up the Vero Beach Hotel and then the big homes that went up throughout that area. But it is very a different sensation as you ride that on your bike these days. So you might need to.
It's also a speed control device for.
Well, this is true.
Yes, traffic calming.
Good answer,
Traffic
Jim.
calming, speed bumps, right?
The last time that we resurfaced Ocean Drive, I'm going to guess 15 years ago, Don?
About that, yeah. Late
And
90s.
we did that at night. We did a mill and resurface. We milled off the first inch. This time we'll probably have to go 2 inches with that one to get some of that failed asphalt, and then go back and redo that. But that's a project that we would recommend to do again in the off season.
Right.
And we would try to do that work at night again. And they've gotten a lot better with the milling and resurfacing process, so it keeps traffic moving. So we'll see where that one falls on.
After
the
the Christmas parade last year, I had a lot of people come up to me and mention it. They hadn't never noticed how bad it was until they were going 3 miles an hour over that.
I've heard the same comments about Ocean Drive from cyclists primarily that utilize here.
It's noticeable.
And it is a major road that all of our tourists that are staying in the hotels in the city limits, they're pretty much all going across that road to get from the boardwalk over to their hotels, and then it's a beautiful drive. So we do have to keep that up.
And we'll take a look at that and see where it falls out on the list.
Page 21 is secondary drainage.
This is just
Annual material cost.
Yeah, that's correct. As with the
Talk
next
these two.
is
Same.
concrete repairing sidewalks and curbs.
Yeah.
And the next
23, Veroa's outfall.
is the one I mistakenly
Okay.
linked
We
to
already
the others.
covered that. East Bayou drainage improvements.
That's the condo there on Riamar West.
Correct, west of A1A. And there's some drainage problems there right on the edge of the right-of-way. And the condominium association asked us a couple years ago to see if we could address this. We've did one section of it about a year and a half ago, and this is the final section.
Is this drainage from the Bayou East condominium property that was not constructed correctly when the condo was put up, or is this the city's own property that?
It's the road.
It's the road.
The road.
Yeah.
So it is our
a little
our
of
fault.
both, but it is the road.
A little
yes.
both.
Mhm. Primarily the
It's
road.
right. It's right away.
It's right of way
Okay.
is where the problem is.
Page 25, River Drive. Where is this one going to take place, Monty?
This is if you go into Riamar Bay subdivision,
Okay.
across the first bridge, and then you take a left. That's River Drive.
Okay.
And this is just to the south side of the bridge. There's an area there that it's just a low spot that the water stands in, so we need to get that water out of there.
Okay.
And please tell me this is more than an inch of water that stands there.
It is, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's trapped. It doesn't have a way to get out to. And we did several of these, when we did the bridges, and we
I
put
was just
some,
gonna ask that.
we put some small baffle boxes in each of those inlets when we redid the bridges there in Remar 2 years ago now.
About 2 years ago.
Okay, page 26, 6th Avenue, 20th, 6th Avenue, 20th Place drainage. Any questions on that one? 27, lease purchase, GF, recreational light vehicle.
This is the program that we're going to be working with the company that is helping us with our leasing vehicles. The first year, that represents 15 general fund vehicles. 2 of those are in recreation. The others, 13, are in other general fund sections.
You read my mind. I was wondering how many vehicles. That's a lot of money for one truck. 28, Airport Road, 34th Avenue.
This is the project I talked to you about that Eric helped us get some funding from the DOT. And this will be the last bridge in the city that was left to have some rehab or reconstruction done.
Right.
So this should put us in good shape on bridges for the next 50 years.
For another 50 years. Yeah.
Good answer.
As you know, Mayor, we did the one at 27th Avenue. It's been about 10 years now.
Wow.
We did the one going to Veterans Island probably that same, maybe 12 years ago, and then the 2 in Riamar 2 years ago. This will be the remaining city bridges.
No comment.
But again, I want to thank Eric for helping us with this funding, because that would have been borrowing that the
Yeah, he did it.
out the real full
That
capitals.
worked out really well for us.
I would just like to say that it's great that the city has recognized that the bridges need to be repaired and replaced. I know not only the state of Florida, but also across the nation, the Engineering Society is grappling with the failure of bridges throughout the area, or the potential failure, and what may be a failure. And this is great that we've recognized this and put the money up to take care of that.
Starting out my engineering career in bridge inspections, this was a goal of mine, was to try to leave the city in better bridge shape than when I found it. So
Good job.
29, 26th Street traffic signal replacement.
this is on the 5-year plan out in 16-17. The traffic signals at US 1 and 26th Street will definitely need work by then. They have started to list a little bit with their foundations, but
That's not my favorite intersection, let's put it that way.
Challenge.
Okay, that'll do it then.
Monty, I just have one question. I'm sorry, I know I'm holding you back from lunch, but just one question. A number of us have been to the meetings of All Aboard Florida, and their plans in terms of bringing the second track for the railroads, which will impact our city streets and the intersections going across those. In terms of creating quiet zones, the requirement as it stands now is that come out of city funding to make improvements to the intersections throughout the city to create a quiet zone, because they're expecting the trains to come through at 70 to 80 miles per hour 32 times a day through our city, and without listening to the horns blaring as they zoom through the intersections 32 times a day, and trying to get work done here at City Hall and everywhere throughout the downtown core. The city would have to come up with the funding to create the quiet zones and for the improvements to the intersections. Has that been discussed at the engineering department? I know it's still in preliminary plans and it will be a couple years out, but as we are looking at a 5-year plan, that may be something we need to have discussions with in terms of what are we going to do?
we have not programmed that in as of yet. I made some notes after we talked yesterday to get any information I can from All Aboard to find out what that may entail, what improvements they might be looking for, and see if there are any cost estimates available. Those intersections that we have now, anytime we cross a FEC right-of-way, we pay an annual license fee. We're on the hook for maintenance, and we're on the hook anytime they rebuild them. So I made a note yesterday to get that, and I'll do my best to get some information back to you as soon as I can.
I've spoken with Debbie Mayfield's office about that, and she is also very concerned and interested in this. So we may want to work together with her.
And it's not just a local issue for us.
No, it's everywhere on the Treasure Coast, from Palm Beach where they leave. I'm sorry, West Palm Beach where they leave until they get to Orlando. Every community that the railroad goes through will be impacted by this.
Just out of curiosity, what is the licensing fee and what's it based on?
Square footage, I think, of the crossing. I've got one on my desk. I'll look at it for right now, but I'll bring some information back on that as well.
Okay.
But like Craig said, they always tell you they were here first. If you want to use their land,
Yep.
It is a significant revenue stream to the railroads because every community in the entire country that I'm aware of
huge stream,
pays
yeah.
that. You put a sewer line under or a water line under or electric, you're paying, even if you go overhead, you're paying for that. So, and then, as Monty says, all of the contracts are written the same, no matter which railroad you're talking to. If they go in and start doing work on their crossings, you're responsible for doing yours. Now, in one city where I worked, we fortunately had an issue with our sewer line that needed to be replaced at the same time they were doing intersection improvements, and so it worked to our benefit. But there have been many times that you'll spend an awful lot of money just to maintain a facility that you have under that.
Well, Monty, when they come through with the second track, which is their expectation from what we've been told, will there be any cost involved to us when they put their second track in? If the arms need to be moved back,
if
or
Onboard Florida is treated like the other rail service, when they put that second track in and modify the crossing, we will be responsible for the modifications that happen to the crossing.
To increase the crossing.
Crossing width, signals moved, whatever it is.
The red is that they put those X's up.
right? And how many crossings do we have within the city limits?
We have both the ones at State Road 60, we have the one at 26th, and the one at 14th, and the one at Aviation. There's 5. The one down
Okay.
16th Street,
Did you get
that's
16?
county.
Okay.
Any other questions of Monty? Seeing none, let's go to lunch, and we'll be back here at 1 o'clock, 1:30. What do you think? 1 o'clock?
I know 3 o'clock there's a recreation meeting. Will that be moved upstairs?
Yeah, it's up.
it will be.
Yeah, it's scheduled if we're not done here to be up in
Okay.
the training room.
I know I'm supposed to be at that meeting as well, so.
All we have left for the afternoon is the water and sewer fund. So.
Well, let's be back at 1 o'clock then. Let's go ahead and get it done.